How to grow mushrooms in the garden when you can't find mushrooms in the forest. You went to the forest and you see your neighbor coming out with a basket full of mushrooms. You look into your basket and there are 3 measly boletes. If you are not lucky enough to find your favorite mushrooms, or someone was always one step ahead of you and picked everything for you, try another method. You can try growing your own mushrooms. The easiest mushrooms to grow are those that do not engage in mycorrhiza with the roots of growing trees, such as oyster mushrooms, button mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms, and even puffballs, which are edible as long as they are young and the flesh is white inside. The amazing giant skullcap, which can reach phenomenal sizes, is relatively easy to obtain. Also kites that usually grow in the grass at the edge of the forest or in clearings. The most frequently collected and recognized mushrooms that are more difficult to obtain are slippery jack mushrooms, bay boletes, chanterelles, parasol mushrooms, morels, birch boletes, truffles and, of course, porcini. The easiest to obtain are slippery jack mushrooms and birch bolete mushrooms. Slippery jack and birch bolete are often grown together in young pine and birch forests. The most difficult ones to obtain will be porcini or truffles. Their cultivation, or rather the fruiting body, may take from 5 to 10 years after the mycelium has been applied, if it was applied correctly at all. The easiest way to obtain the mycelium of a given mushroom is to buy it online. They are widely available and easy to use. You can buy exactly the species of mushroom you are interested in or match the species of mushrooms to the conditions in your garden. So if you already have birch trees, choose birch bolete mushrooms. If you have, for example, oak or beech trees, you can apply porcini or bay boletes. The choice is very large, from granulated mycelium to liquid mycelium, which is very effective even with many mixtures of mushroom species. It is a good practice for foresters to soak the roots of young trees intended for planting in nurseries in the mycelium. Of course, this is not intended to produce mushrooms, but trees with inoculated mycelium develop much better and take root easier, are healthier and develop better. To be successful in growing wild mushrooms in your garden, you must meet several conditions. To grow mycelium, a food source called substrate is used, organic residues, litter, peat and even rice or straw, depending on the type of mushroom. Food also includes sugar and, for example, flour. The mycelium then decomposes and transforms the substrate in a fermentation process similar to that in yogurt. The longest living part of the fungal organism, the mycelium, consists of complex filaments only 1 cell wall thick. Despite its delicate structure, mycelium is quite powerful, growing for months, years, and potentially centuries. Mycelium can navigate sometimes inhospitable ecosystems. It is able to expand its reach into a habitat filled with millions of microbes, communicating chemically with the surrounding environment, developing complex chemical reactions to any challenges it encounters. Therefore, don't be surprised if you apply the mycelium in one place and the fruiting body appears in another, or even on your neighbor's plot, which would be a partial success. The hyphae feed, grow and branch to form a colony and can later form fungi. Hyphae can also be grown, for example, on agar in the laboratory. Hyphae need O2 and produce CO2 just like animals. If you are not sure whether the soil in your garden is suitable as a substrate for a larger area, for better cultivation success, you can use ready-made garden soil with a high content of peat and a mixture of sawdust from coniferous and deciduous trees in a 5:1 ratio. Each species of mushroom will have slightly different soil requirements, although most of them have quite approximate. Specific species of mushrooms and their cultivation can be found on my channel in separate videos. The next stage is to find a suitable place in the garden. It must have favorable conditions for the development of fungi, i.e. it must be warm and humid. Therefore, it should be a wet place, slightly heated by the sun, but not so much that the soil periodically completely dries out. Look for places on the lawn covered with moss or other mushroom fruiting bodies. The occurrence of mycorrhizal forest fungi depends on the phenomenon of mycorrhiza, a specific symbiosis of plant roots with species of fungi adapted to their needs. It is a process that benefits both parties. Trees can draw more valuable nutrients and water from the ground, and they also gain resistance to many diseases. In return, the fungi receive carbohydrates produced in the process of photosynthesis. Another important element of successful mushroom cultivation is a tree suitable for a given mushroom species, from whose roots the mushroom will produce mycorrhiza and enter into symbiosis. Without it, the mushroom will not grow. Each species of fungus has different requirements for trees. It is best if they are relatively young trees, between 5 and 10 years old. That's why so many mushrooms grow like in forest nurseries. We sow pine boletes near coniferous trees such as pine. Boletes edulis likes pine, spruce, beech and oak. Chanterelle grows under pine, spruce, oak, beech and hornbeam. Brown bolete under pine and spruce. Birch bolete under birch, common bolete under pine, larch and spruce. Delicious lactarius likes pine and spruce, typically coniferous trees. Morels like pine and spruce bark with an admixture of sawdust, ash from burnt wood and plaster. However, truffles like poplars, oaks, hazel, willows and beeches and require alkaline limestone soil above 7.5 pH. Dig holes around the tree at a distance of 50 centimeters to 5 meters, 15 centimeters deep and about 40 centimeters in diameter. The larger the diameter of the tree trunk, the further we can dig holes. The optimal distance will be 10 tree trunk diameters. The tree's roots reach twice the size of the tree's crown itself. Fill the holes with garden soil with peat, preferably deacidified. Then apply mycelium to each hole. It is best if the roots are visible. This gives a greater guarantee of acceptance of the mycelium after application. Then pour about 0.5 liters of previously prepared soil substrate and cover it with a 5 centimeter layer of soil. The whole thing should be beaten thoroughly. The younger the tree, the closer you need to apply the mycelium. Water the application site thoroughly, 1 bucket of water around each hole. The sowing site should be covered with a layer of bark, leaves, moss or twigs, preferably straight from the forest, but store-bought bark from a bag will work, as it often also contains spores like morel. Such a substrate will retain moisture. We should not mow such places with a lawn mower. The grass also retains moisture. In natural conditions, mushrooms often grow on fallen, rotting trees. It is also worth placing such small logs in the garden, drilling holes and watering them with the medicine, covering them with soil and watering them. Next, water each place where the mycelium has been inoculated with a bucket of rainwater. The best time for such sowing is when it is in nature. So if we currently have an abundance of bay bolete or bolete in the forest in September, we do it this month. There are then optimal conditions that will guarantee the survival and development of the mycelium. If mushrooms spread their spores from under their caps in a given month, this will be the best time. If rainfall is low, the newly inoculated place with mycelium should be watered regularly. In the case of edible forest mushrooms, it is best to apply in periods when the soil is wet and when the ground temperature exceeds 10 degrees Celsius. Ideal conditions prevail in spring and autumn. For successful cultivation, you need at least 3 trees of a given species for a specific type of mushroom, with which the mycelial hyphae will be able to enter the mycorrhiza. The more trees, the greater the chance of obtaining a mushroom fruiting body. It is said that mushrooms grow where 2 myceliums meet. Depending on what species of mushrooms you choose, in good conditions the mushrooms will appear after 2 years. But it may take up to 5 or 10 years. The mycelium will bear fruit for about 4 years or longer, so it is worth supplementing the substrate with new mycelium. Remember that the appearance of mushrooms also depends on weather conditions. A good practice is to pour a sugar solution at the place where the mycelium is applied, which has a positive effect on the development of fungi. It is a kind of fertilizer for mushrooms that improves and increases their development and multiplication. Prepare it with 10 grams of sugar and 10 liters of water, add a cube of yeast and set aside for 2 hours. Then we water the soil with the solution. From time to time, the plantation can be watered with a small amount of water, especially if there has been no rainfall for 2 weeks. During the fruiting period, in the absence of rainfall, it is recommended to moisten the soil periodically. The optimal temperature for mushrooms is between 18 and 28 degrees Celsius. They can also grow in a slightly cooler environment. However, the minimum temperature is 3.5 degrees Celsius. Mushroom spores are already starting to grow. You can use sugar water and yeast as a medium for mushrooms. Yeast are single-celled fungi, microorganisms. Yeast extract is added to produce the medium. It is rich in growth factors such as free amino acids, vitamins, and nucleotides, which can significantly increase the specific growth rate, rapid accumulation of biomass, shorten the growth cycle of multicellular mushrooms, increase production by a minimum of 50%. Depending on the mushroom species, there is a greater chance of cultivation success. The ideal yeast for this treatment is the Mechnicoia pulcherrima strain, but Saccharomyces cerevisiae will also be good and is generally available and cheap. Glucose itself will be the best when it comes to feeding the mushrooms, but the yeast will also break down sucrose. I present the whole process in another video on my channel. Because you often ask me where to get mycelium and what mycelium I recommend. The film uses mycelium grzybnie.pl products. You can purchase them safely on the website grzybnie.pl, which is proven and safe, and the products and myceliums available on offer are always fresh and of the highest quality. Shipments are well packed, orders are processed quickly, and on the website itself you will find many guides and tips for amateurs taking their first steps in growing mushrooms.